Good morning. Welcome to the Sycamore Township workshop meeting. It is Tuesday, March 17th, 2020. The time is 9 a.m. Mr. Porter, let the record show that all three trustees are accounted for. Mr. Weedman is on the phone from Florida. Vice Chairman Tom James and Chairman Jim LaBarbera are present. We are streaming this meeting live. For future reference, it can be found on the first page of our website. This meeting is being videotaped and will be available on our website. We discourage the public from attending. Each of us in this room passed through a screening procedure. We're operating out of an abundance of caution to ensure the safety of our residents and our township staff. At this time, I'm going to make a motion to amend and shorten the workshop agenda from the draft version that has been published. Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I would the staff has determined that there's just a few things we'd like you to consider this morning. One is approving the minutes, paying the bills, and approving one purchase order, and then moving into our discussion on the COVID-19 issue. And the staff has determined that all the other items can be put off to a later meeting.
Okay, thank you. I make a motion to approve the March 3rd, 2020 workshop meetings.
Wait, hold on. We have a motion pending as to abbreviating the agenda that we need to address.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Mr. Porter.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
And for the record, under Ohio law, Mr. Weedman's not able to vote despite appearing by phone. But let me ask Mr. Weedman, do you agree with the minutes as they are?
I do.
Thank you.
I make a motion to approve the March 5th trustee meeting minutes.
Second, and I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself there. Asking minutes, didn't I? Asking Mr. Weedman.
Yeah, I do approve those still.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye. And now that we can pay the bills and read the receipts.
Did you do March 3rd?
Yes, we did.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Fiscal Officer, Rob Porter.
Yes, we have receipts of $42,491.84, disbursements of $70,056.05. A complete listing of all receipts and disbursements is available in the office for your review.
Mr. Collins, you have a purchase order for permanent.
Wait, we got
He
I'm
approves
sorry.
that, sir.
And before you, we also, all the bills are electronically signed as the last meeting. I do have 5 manual checks from the CIC that we need 2 board members of the CIC to sign before you leave.
Okay, I move that we approve the bills.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
And let me ask again, as courtesy, Mr. Weedman, are you good with that?
I am.
Thank you.
Okay, now, Mr. Collins.
Yes, I have a blanket PO. This is for permanent easements for the Kugler Mill sidewalk project. If you remember, I brought one to you that was for temporary easements and said I'd have another one. We currently have our consultant out who has done appraisals and is working on getting these easements from the homeowners. So this just gets us ready so that when they come through, we have a PO in place for that, and it's for $36,000.
I move that we approve the PO for $36,000 for the Kugler Mill Road easements.
And I'll second that.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
And let me ask again, Mr. Weedman, are you good with that?
I am good with it.
Thank you.
Okay, before I turn the floor over to our Administrator, Ray Warwick, and we discuss COVID-19, last Monday, I represented Sycamore Township on the Hamilton County District Advisory Council for Public Health. I did ask if there was a health concern over the Verizon 5G cell towers that residents voiced concerns about at our last meeting. Jennifer Mooney, the Assistant Hamilton County Health Commissioner, assured us there is no health concern. We are in no danger. COVID-19, of course, was discussed. Immediate risk to the public still considered low. At that time, still in the risk mitigation phase. Now, this was 8 days ago. Then 14-day isolation for those with travel profile. Ohio was monitoring more than 200 people at that time that had been or were under self-isolation. We are a member of 8-county preparedness region for emergency planning and exercising. They have a call bank set up that can be activated immediately. And if you have concerns, there are a number of websites. We have them all on the front page of our website, and there are links to those available. Obviously, things have changed drastically. It is a very fluid situation, and information is evolving literally by the hour. And to lead our discussion this morning, Administrator Ray Warwick.
Thank you. We've done several things already and been in touch with other townships and other agencies. First of all, we have contacted everyone who had the community room or a baseball field or a soccer field reserved and told them that we are suspending those activities through the first week of April. We'll decide as this thing moves along if we need to extend that. So everybody has been informed. People will not be charged, and any deposits that have been made will be returned. I don't believe there was any pushback on that. In fact, some of the folks even called us prior and said that they'd be canceling due to the COVID-19 situation. So all of that is taken care of through the first week of April. The fire department's going to have some other things to present, but they have shut down the fact that there can be no visitors to the fire station. I'll turn it over to them in a minute, and they can talk about the other things that they've done in preparation. We have put in a virtual network system so that employees can access their township computers from home. We are also working on instructions for everyone to be able to transfer the phones here in the township to personal cell phones. And we've got all of that set up in case that we are forced to work from home, or if somebody is uncomfortable coming in and wants to work from home. So we do have those things in place. We talked about whether we should do a shutdown of this building, and what the staff, where the staff is at as of yesterday afternoon when we met. We felt like we could keep this building open for the zoning kind of activities, because we operate all of that behind glass. And then we also talked about how to protect ourselves from documents and plans that will be dropped off by not touching them for 48 hours and things of that nature. At this point, no one on staff has informed me that they would like to stay home, or they thought the building should be shut down. So I think that's a part of the discussion that the board needs to have today. Mr. Weidman suggested to us last night in an email that we consider a 4-week shutdown. So that's something I think we have to thrash out today. The other thing is the protocol. If somebody gets sick, we'll go ahead and button that down, but we kind of had to confront it yesterday anyway, because yesterday morning Skylar Miller called in and said that his wife was having symptoms that sounded like the coronavirus, and he wanted to come in, and we told him he could not come in, and he's been instructed to stay home until it's determined what is actually wrong with his wife. He already has the technology to access our township files from home, and I think he's also having phone calls forwarded to him, so he's able to operate from there. And like I just mentioned, we have that technology available for all of our other key people should we need to do it that way. I think that covers it. I think you've seen what Tori has forwarded to all of us about how the Sheriff's Department is operating on a different kind of protocol, and I'll let him address that. And I think you've seen various things from the fire chief And the assistant chief is also here this morning to talk about a general order that he put out last night and any other things that they're doing. So if Tori, if you could briefly just recap where the sheriff department is.
Good morning, board. Good morning, everyone. So basically, as of yesterday morning, we initiated our sheriff's office phasing operation. That's part of our policy. Phasing is rare. I've only experienced it twice in my career, but it's in response to catastrophes and major incidents and things like that. So we're currently under phase one. Internally for the sheriff's office, what that means is everyone within the sheriff's office, not just patrol, not just the people you work and interact with, but everyone in the entire office is basically put on notice to be at the ready in case things get progressively worse. So everyone is put on notice and just kind of getting in a state of preparation. Externally, what that means for the public is part of our plan is to implement a limited response procedure. Now, we have other times and incidents where we operate under a limited response, for instance, adverse weather conditions, things like that. But what we will do is we will kind of pick and choose what we're responding to. That sounds a little abrupt, it's going to be inconvenient for some, but under a limited response plan, low priority runs, minor incidents, crimes that involve nonviolent minor offenses, we will handle those on a limited basis, and we'll be conducting a lot of our normal business by phone. Instead of a resident or someone calling us to respond to a location of business or a home, our deputy will make contact with them via phone. If a report is necessary, we will still take reports as per normal, but we won't be physically responding to the location to deal with them face to face. If we have a theft report or a criminal damaging report or something of that nature, oftentimes, the deputy would respond into the dwelling, the business, and take a report at a service counter or at a person's dining room table, and we're going to eliminate that. And let me stress, that is for very minor, non-priority kind of reports or runs. We will direct the public to call us to report crimes of that kind of nature, or we will direct them to respond to their nearest sheriff's facility to report different incidents and crimes. Now, let me also stress, any crime that is in progress, any crime involving violence, domestic dispute or domestic violence incident, assault, things of that nature, any crime involving a true emergency or any incident or crime that requires the immediate presence of a police officer, we will respond as per normal. We will be there. Auto crashes, if we have a crash with injuries, if we have a crash with special circumstances, like we have maybe a utility pole that's been struck and we have wires down, or we have vehicles that are disabled and blocking the roadway, blocking the thoroughfare, or perhaps if we suspect that there's an impaired driver, we will respond to those as per normal. However, if we have minor fender benders, private property auto crashes, maybe two vehicles bump into one another on the lot of the town center or a restaurant or business, we will advise those people, again, to call us, or we'll call them, or to go to a sheriff's facility to report the auto crash. In the state of Ohio, regarding auto crashes, motorists have 72 hours. By law, they have 72 hours to report something like that. So we'll strongly encourage them to exchange information, take photos on their cell phones and things like that for their own records and purposes, and then they can report it later. With squad runs, as you know, Chief, we get a lot of squad runs in this township. If it is a sick person or something that's fairly routine, we will not respond. We will log it with the dispatcher and advise them to have the fire department respond. If it's a true emergency, if we have somebody that's not breathing, if it's a drug overdose, a cardiac event, if there's an amputation or severe bleeding, arterial bleeding, we will respond accordingly, as we always do. But if we have a squad run with flu-like symptoms, or just for a sick person, or maybe to one of our retirement facilities for an assist back to bed, we're simply not going to enter the business or the dwelling. And now the trump card to all that regarding squad runs is if the fire department gets on scene and they request a sheriff's deputy, we will absolutely be there, no problem. But we're just limiting what we do. We're changing how we do it. And the number one goal right now for us is to keep our staff healthy and safe, because let's face it, if we're sick, we're of no good to you or the public. We're of no good to anybody. We have to be able to get there. So that's what we're doing right now. Right now, there's been no indication from the sheriff or his administration as to if or when we might proceed to phase 2. Mainly phase 2, again, what we do is very much internal. If we move to phase 2, off days will be canceled, casual leave will be canceled. If a deputy has a pending vacation request and it's been pre-approved, that deputy will be allowed off, but anything in terms of an extra day off or a casual leave situation will be denied. We would all be placed or put on 12-hour shifts. All deputies would be working around the clock. We would activate the special deputy unit. We have 80-plus special deputies, and they would be brought in to do things like direct traffic or answer phones or transport prisoners or things like that. So if we get into phase 2, that's when it's all hands on deck. People from our detective bureau, our narcotics unit, deputies assigned to those specialized units would come out and join patrol in our efforts. So, but right now there's no indication or timeline on when or if we'd move to that phase 2. So we ask the public to please be patient. We are at your service, but the manner in which we communicate is going to be quite different, especially for very minor incidents. Side note, I've had interaction with 3 citizens this morning, very positive interactions. People seem to be in decent or good spirits. A lot of thanks from the public, a lot of well wishes. So I know it's early, but so far so good. The radio is pretty quiet over the past couple of days. People are just basically, I think, in their homes, hunkering down and doing what they got to do. So all is well at the moment.
Thanks. Question.
I think you answered all of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom, did you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Chief, you would give us a brief synopsis of where we're at today.
Okay. Let me. Ray, you got this, didn't you?
I did.
The coronavirus is right now it is a growing animal. More people are being affected daily. The situations are changing daily. So because of that, before I get into my request, I know this meeting today was short notice on how to figure out what to do with it. I would recommend and suggest that any future meetings until we get things under control is to totally bar the public from being able to attend these meetings, and possibly even not having them ourselves if we can figure out a way to do this remotely of all cases. The reason I say that is because what concerns me now, there's always been a concern for the 14-day trial period of where you could be a carrier before you start showing symptoms. Now, there's 3 cases out there where the people have the coronavirus and had no symptoms. So the theory of the questions and checking your temperature is still not a guarantee that you're not a carrier. And it's still not a guarantee that you're not leaving germs here that somebody else is going to get that are going to get the symptoms. So that's scary when you think that you got people out there that are running stealth mode and they're germ carriers and they're carrying this virus.
Chief, can I interrupt 1 second and ask a question? First of all, some of us have been in discussion with Mr. Warwick about methods for implementing electronic meetings going forward. There are some complications in state law that are being worked out as to that, but we've got some ideas in place already as to how to do that using a service such as Zoom or WebEx and so forth in our live video. But secondly, in our meetings recently, we've been putting things on the big screen so the public can see what we're talking about. And I know Mr. Miller is the one who usually runs that. He's not here today. But just for the public's reference, you've handed us all a handout marked General Order 2020-01.
I'll bring that next.
Well, and let me just ask too, will you be making this available on the website in some form?
It will not. It will
It's
not
not.
be on the website.
Okay.
If somebody wants to see it, this is what I handed out is a general order that goes. It's going out to our firefighters,
Okay.
and it's an order to give them leeway and a protocol on how to conduct themselves with EMS runs, and if we do have somebody affected with the virus. That's what this SOP is for,
Okay.
which I'll get into that now as far as what, in a short summary of what this SOG says. And it basically, Jerry and I have done a lot of research, talked to a lot of other departments, and Jerry basically came in over the weekend and created this general order that he typed it up so we would have something for Monday morning to disseminate out to our crews. And we haven't gotten it out before now because we were talking with other departments and we were trying to come up with a game plan. We went through a lot of discussion with our future medical director that has been a great asset to us so far with leading us down the right path on what to do medically. And then we did a lot of interviews with some hospital doctors, and the CDC and some of the doctors that you see on television are giving you some guidelines on how to do things, but the doctors in the emergency room, they see this all the time. They see this daily, the patients daily, and we need to confide with what they're doing in the hospitals. For the perfect example is Friday and Monday, the area hospitals here barred all the visitors from the hospital. So no visitors are allowed in with any patients in a hospital. Well, how does that affect us? It affects us because now that we take a patient to a hospital, can we take a family member with us? Which normally we do. In a lot of cases we do. And the answer is no. We're not allowed to bring a family member to the hospital with us unless the patient cannot provide their own history or they're on a near-death scenario. Those are the only two exceptions.
Mr. Weedman had a
Go
question.
ahead, Tom.
Go ahead.
Chief, I assume that exempts minors, correct?
I didn't hear you.
He said minors.
he
That
said,
would be
does that
children.
include-
You would explain that.
Pediatric and minors are allowed one adult to go with them. As far as the who can remain at the hospital, pediatric and childbirth are the only two exceptions, or near death are the only exceptions that will allow one family member to be in the hospital with the patient. Other than that, they don't want anybody. So we have to be vigilant on our end with that we don't bring a family member to the hospital and the hospital says you're not coming in, now they're stuck outside the parking lot, so we had to deal with that. So we did put together this general order that is what it's basically doing is it's protecting and putting minimal exposure to our guys to someone that has the virus. And as I spoke last week, the Hamilton County Comm Center is doing their questionnaire on the dispatch to determine whether or not it's a coronavirus symptom type of person. And if it is, then the dispatcher will let our medic unit know that this is the type of person type of patient we're responding to. Saying that, what we've done is we provided gowns, we provide safety goggles, gloves, and the mask, the proper mask for our firefighters to be able to safely be in their protective equipment to go in and deal with this type of patient. The other thing we've done is this SOG basically says also that we're trying to limit the exposure to how many firefighters are going to a patient, and we're doing that by leaving everybody that responds to the run staged outside and having one guy dress out and go in and deal with the patient. Our goal is to have the patient walk out to the cot to where they're outside, out of the outside, in the outside air. If that's not possible, then the rest of the crew has to gown up and gear up and go in and get the patient out. There's always an exceptions to the rules. We always run into to problems. It's never textbook. And we got to anticipate, not textbook. For example, if we get somebody that's obese, one or two firefighters are not going to be able to handle someone like that. So it takes a whole crew to do it. We can get older people that have not brought their symptoms out to the dispatch, and when you get them in the squad en route to the hospital, they're like, well, yeah, I do have a fever now, this type of thing. And all of a sudden, whoa, they went from not being a symptomatic person to being a symptomatic person. So that stuff can happen. So we need to be prepared for it and anticipate it. So and then the general order also goes over the cleanup and that sort of thing. So saying that, I'm going to let Jerry talk just a minute on what we're doing to as far as the operations, the station, and the staffing, how we're trying to deal with the staffing if we get somebody affected by this that catches it and so on. So I'll let Jerry speak on that.
Jerry Cooper is our assistant fire chief.
Not even cheaters here. So good morning, everybody. First, let me elaborate on a couple of things the chief spoke about. You asked about the general order, what that actually meant. So when we create a general order, what that is that's basically a standard operating procedure or guideline, as we call them, that is immediate and often temporary until we either create an actual guideline that could be permanent. So when you hear him or any of us cross-referencing SOG or general order, that's what the general orders are. There's something that comes out in a quick fashion that we can disseminate to people.
Let me ask you this, if I could, though. The purpose of my question was just we're trying to be very open with the public about what we're doing. There's nothing confidential in this, I assume, is there?
There is nothing confidential. I'm hesitant to share some of the things that we do at this point in time with the public because, as Mr. LaBarbera mentioned, and it's become my phrase, it's very fluid. It's literally things change by the hour. I came in yesterday morning and the area East Side Fire Chiefs, we all had an emergency meeting basically to discuss some major issues with referring to this, and things changed in my head that I had to come back and edit some things.
Okay, but by presenting it to the trustees in a public meeting, it becomes a public record, so it is
free
available.
If somebody does want to see it, they are free to look at it.
Okay,
yes.
thanks.
There's nothing confidential. It's just nothing I want to put out there every day because it could be getting edited and somebody could carry the older information instead of having the new, if that makes sense.
Right.
But yes, if somebody would like to look at it, they're more than free. We did go off, most of this comes off the CDC recommendations for EMS care. So a lot of this was literally copy and paste from the CDC, and we threw in some specifics that refer to our department operations. And as Chief said, I had some conversations, correspondence with our future medical director, which has been a great asset to us even on the front side of things before that's even done, which has really helped us out a lot and some guidance with this. The one thing I do want to say, referring to this, is our protective equipment that the chief had mentioned is going to be more common, and we actually, as with society right now, we have to change some of the operations out of the norm that we would do. You may see one of our personnel come to the door wearing a mask, and most likely if we're notified that you meet some of these criteria for the COVID-19, or if we think that, okay, I'm hearing cough or something on that, we are going to stay 6 feet at least away from you if we can, and I'm probably going to ask you to put a mask on yourself. At that point, we will quickly evaluate you, try to get a temperature, and then if you're ambulatory, we will ask you to walk out to the cot or the ambulance if that's possible. This all boils down to us trying to limit our exposures. If we can keep it to one paramedic that's actually in direct contact with that patient, that's our goal. Obviously, if there's assistance because of medical treatment needs, everybody will wear their proper equipment and assist that in order to take care of the patient. Patient care comes first, by all means. When the resident or even the caregiver, so for any of you guys that know people in nursing homes, or if they're looking at this or watching this, if you do call 911 and you do have some symptoms, or the dispatcher is likely going to ask you some questions, please answer them honestly, and let them know that if you have those symptoms or not. That's important for us. As we are responding, we can prepare ourselves. Okay, I need to wear this and this before I even approach them. So that helps us out on the front side of things. But don't be alarmed if we are wearing a mask or something, because it's here to protect us. We have a large portion of our patient base, I guess you could say, are individuals that probably fall into this critical category. They're elderly. We have a large number of retirement centers. Our biggest goal with a lot of this is to protect those people.
Do you have all the equipment you need? I've asked that in prior meetings, and the chief thought you were good, but I know things are scarce now and being used up.
That depends on what equipment it is. We are very limited on some resources on certain things. We do have maybe a plan B we can go to on some of it. The issue we're running into now is going through our vendors is everything is pretty much on eternal back order, I guess you could probably say.
Is there anything you need the trustees to authorize? I should ask the chief that too, I guess.
Possibly, but not right at the moment. I will let you know. When it comes to us with these EMS supplies, the EMS supplies that Jerry's talking about basically was sold out in 3 days. Mm-hmm. So when the last meeting, when we talked, the stock was there, and within 3 days later it wasn't, because it's just boom, it went like that. But saying that, we are anticipating now to order and restock on our normal EMS supplies, that like surgical gloves, everything that we use, because of the fact that this whole thing is going to trickle for months. Even once they even declare that the virus is gone and we're good to go, when it comes to the medical supply field and so on and so forth, you're still looking at 2-3 months later before things. So they're recommending that we stock up at least 6 months in advance, 6 months ahead of things.
Well, if there is something you need from the trustees for rapid approval of something, we can figure out some way to either meet in an emergency meeting, work through Mr. Warwick on that, or I understand there are procedures for just doing it and approving it retroactively with certain PO measures, but we obviously want to protect the public and you guys.
That. Yeah,
so.
we
Absolutely.
we're definitely and we know that we got full support of our trustees. There's no question about that. It's just that we don't have everything planned out because of how it's going. A lot of it is creeping up on us. A lot of it is things where you go online, order your stuff, and it's like out of stock for a long time. It's like, oh geez, well, here we go. So it's not it's not something that we've got laid out as of yet, but we're working on that. The biggest concern that we have right now is if we do, because I talked to Mr. Weedman yesterday morning, because he called me and asked me about it. But one of the big concerns that we have right now is if we're taking all the precautions to not have firefighters affected, but what if it does happen? Then we got problems, because we're limited staffing. We're short staffed now. Anytime that we have call-offs and that, we bring in overtime to fill those. But if we start getting the guys that pick up the overtime sick, or their family members are sick, just like Skylar's not sick, but his wife is, so he can't be here. We have the same situation. If one of our firefighters' kids or parents or wives get sick and they're in contact with them, they can't come to work either. So it's a big deal. and it gets to the point where with the units that we staff daily, if we lose one person off of those units and can't replace them, we take that unit out of service. So we could get to a point, if we have firefighters affected, that we'd end up having to take fire units or EMS units out of service if we can't replace them with overtime people. So it can be critical until we get additional firemen into our system, but that's not going to happen while this is going on. So obviously we have to make it. But just to let you know that we could be in a situation where that could happen. That's why we've taken all these measures to protect our guys, to prevent any exposure.
Okay, and I'm sorry I interrupted you with that question.
Anytime, that's what we're here for. So, to expand on that with what the chief said about us and our staffing and all that, one big thing, and it falls back onto this order and our precautions, is as you guys well know, he's communicated with you often how many times we're actually able to leave the hospital immediately and respond to another call, and we're able to try to maintain our resources that way with limited staffing. That's probably not going to happen as often right now. After they make a call, they're going to have to decontaminate the equipment and the things that they used on that. That could take upwards from 15 minutes to a half an hour. So all those times that we are usually able to return into service and be available for other calls, that's probably going to decline for a while. And I do like to tell guys, it's always moving. There's things changing. Protocols can change. We are pretty much going off of the CDC on what they recommend, so that's what's in here for the most part. That could change. Now we're into the community spread issue of it. Already some of the questions have changed. It's no, have you been abroad? Now it's, have you been in a group of people, or where have you been? So things are moving fast. I won't stay too long on this, but pretty much everything we're going to do is written here, how we're going to, I guess, respond or react to this situation as far as people with the symptoms. So feel free to read through it. If you have questions, let us know. I'm going to move on so we don't take up too much more time. Another general order will be coming out hopefully today that will explain the restrictions or the reduction in services that the fire department's actually gonna provide right now during this. A few of those things, I'm sorry I don't have it written. My last 2 days have been very busy with getting all this together. We will no longer be doing inspections unless there's a hazard involved or a request to check something because of a hazard. Doug Morath will be doing the only inspections that he will do if it's a county inspection in order to keep a construction or something moving or a final, so the business needs open. But those are very low interaction with public. Usually it's with another public official. Other than that, any routine inspections or fire safety inspections have been suspended. And I'll have a more detailed list that I will post on our Facebook page, and then possibly send it over to you to put on the township page also. As far as services goes, we're going to suspend our car seat installation program. No public education or station visits, anything like that is going to be suspended. Like I said, this is a short list. Our fire stations are closed to the public. I handed out a flyer, basically a sign that we're going to put on each firehouse at the front doors, stating the fact we're only going to allow emergency personnel, essential township employees, or essential vendors if we need to meet with somebody briefly to order supplies or do something. But the public will not be allowed inside our fire stations. And the reason for this is to protect our emergency responders, which in turn protects our citizens and our at-risk patients in the future. So if you do see a sign, I did say if they need to call 911, it's on there, and I put the address of each firehouse. So if they use their mobile phone, they can give the address of where they're located. I know it's an inconvenience, but this is unprecedented for all of us and everything. So we're taking those steps to try to keep everyone safe.
Well, the last thing we want is all these precautions that we're doing on going out and taking care of patients and have somebody walk in the firehouse and infect our guys because they're wanting directions somewhere, you know. So.
Would you guys, if you haven't already, email Mr. Weedman a copy of this general order you've provided to us? You did. Thank you.
I actually already have a copy of it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and these things are going to change. I mean, I can put the new one out today that says, here's what we're doing. And it's going to have additional things, you know, how we're going to disinfect the fire station every day. And things may expand, you know, depending on where things go, because we don't know. I will say, after yesterday's quick meeting, we do have an invaluable resource with our Eastern Fire Chiefs group that we all share ideas and things that we're trying to do that help us all kind of create these things that works for everybody. So
Let me ask you this. With the situation currently, with everyone hunkering down, essentially, business is down, restaurants are closed, I'm sure business, quote unquote, for you is going to be stepping up rapidly soon, but have you actually seen a downturn in runs the last few
No,
days?
believe it or not, when we have, this kind of does the same as holidays. When we have businesses closed, we get more home runs. We get more runs to homes than we do to the business. We always get the nursing home runs; those are a given. But our runs to residents pick up when the businesses are closed. Believe it or not, more fires occur when more people are home than when they're not. We experience that on holidays when a lot of stores are closed. Our runs will pick up to people's homes more than anything. So it could drop a little, but I think our residential side's going to pick up because people are home doing dumb things and you know, or get sick or whatever. But it happens, and then of course the nursing homes, the highways, things like that they pretty much stay the same.
I was going to offer a suggestion. If there are idle times where you guys are sitting around with nothing to do, and I doubt that happens very often, but you mentioned suspending public education. The township has its own YouTube page now as well. If any of the firefighters wanted to spend some time making educational videos, it could be helpful to the public during this time about, you know, how to sanitize things and so on. I know those are out there from other sources too, but that might be useful.
Yeah, no question about it.
But don't let it distract from your regular duties, of course.
No, that's
well,
good.
and we feel for a lot of our elderly residents, our seniors at the retirement centers. I know they're not allowed to have visitors, so normally in situations like that, a lot of us would want to try to do something but we can't. There's nothing we can't go visit. We can't stop in and say hi. So we're all kind of on our own islands, and I think it's just safer for everybody, and we're taking every precaution to keep everybody safe. It's literally a safety issue. So, but if you do get any calls, reference anything, the only thing we're going to do that's not emergent service really is a smoke detector, either a battery change, because that puts in a whole other life safety factor on top of everything else. What I would ask, if you're an able-bodied resident and you're able to change the battery in your smoke detector, please do so. If you're not, we don't want anybody to get hurt trying to climb on a chair or a ladder. We will come out and make sure your smoke detector is in operation, but that's about it. After that, we're just kind of containing ourselves to within. So ever changing though, could change next week, could change by the afternoon. So that's kind of where we are.
Good, thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. The only other thing I have that's a concern of mine, and I believe it might be a resolution that's out there, is that we consider suspending all random drug testing until this thing goes up. I don't particularly want to send my firemen to the urgent care and sit with all the sick people just to get a drug test done.
Does that require action from us, or is that an internal person?
Tom might know. Mr. Weedman knows.
Is a collective bargaining agreement something
I don't.
that has to be?
No, it's not in that. But I didn't know if it might be. It's a township-wide procedure that's done. So I don't know if that was done off of resolution originally or how that was done. But that would be something that I guess you'd have to vote on.
Well,
It is in the
this is-
handbook also.
is it? Okay. Ray, do you have a recommendation as to that? I don't have the handbook in front of us. I'm happy to move to suspend it during the duration of the public health emergency. But
Yeah, I think you can do that.
all right, I move we suspend any drug testing requirements for township employees during the duration of the public health emergency or for a period not to exceed 18 months, whichever is shorter.
Okay, appreciate it, thank you.
Can I think maybe you want to make sure that it's the random drug testing. If there's some with cause, they
Yeah.
should.
Sure,
Yeah, it's the
random,
random
right.
that we, yeah.
All right, I'll
Good catch.
amend the motion that way. Thank you, yes.
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. James?
Let me ask first, Mr. Weedman, do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, I thought I heard you say 18 months.
I said either the duration of the emergency or 18 months, whichever is shorter. I think we should put a time on it.
Whichever is shorter, say, okay, yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay. Then aye.
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Okay, I
And
think,
Chief,
Yeah, good.
Go ahead.
Chief,
Yeah.
hey, I just, I want to thank you and Jerry for the great job you guys did on this. I had a chance to review this general order, and I appreciate your comments and our conversation yesterday. Again, my real concern has always been the exposure that our medics and our firemen have to this virus, and our ability to keep them healthy. Because, as you mentioned, the minute we lose one person, we've got to. In other departments, we can figure out how to make it work. In this department, we have a big hole.
Right.
And so I think this is a real comprehensive instruction to our staff, and I think you guys did an excellent job on it. So I want to congratulate you on that.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate the support of all the trustees and the administrator for allowing us to do what we have to do. It wouldn't be functional if we didn't have that.
We appreciate all you guys and what all the firefighters do, certainly, yes.
I believe that's all I have.
Ray?
I think what's left for us to discuss is what we want to do with the administrative staff and the other two inspectors we have. We talked some about this, as I mentioned earlier, and we felt we could operate. I think Tracy's had some discussions about what the other two inspectors may want to do or not do. But I think we need some guidance on how you want us to operate.
Here's my suggestion. We as the trustees are the ultimate bosses in the township, but you are the head of the township administration, and my thought is we should give you the discretion to make these calls as to what to do with the building, with the staff, with remote working, and so forth, and enable you the discretion to do that as the chief executive officer of the township. Do you have thoughts as to that, or do the other trustees have thoughts as to that?
I would defer to Ray on this. I was here yesterday for a couple of hours, and Ray knows the staff better, and he's in constant contact with them, and I believe you make that decision.
Tom, Mr. Weedman, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I had expressed my opinion as it relates to closing down all of our public buildings, and I think as trustees, it's incumbent upon us to set the barriers to protect the health and safety of our staff and the residents as well. For us to have the administration building open and to have somebody come in to drop off plans, and on the way through they stop to go to the bathroom and they use the public restroom, and one of the employees uses the restroom following them, and that same employee brings dinner to his immune deficient parent or grandmother, and next thing you know, we've spread this. And so for us to be able, in this electronic age where we can communicate by phone, we can communicate by internet, for us to have the building open doesn't seem to be good judgment, in my opinion. I noticed that the last workshop, when we sat there were 3 people that came in during where I said I can see who comes through the front door into the window, and I saw 3 different people come in with questions during that period, just during the period of our workshop. And so I want to be on record to say that I'm opposed to keeping any of our public buildings open. I think we can I think we have the ability to communicate with our residents in alternate ways, and I think this helps better to protect the health and the safety of our staff and our residents.
Here's a thought. What if we were to close the building to public access subject to appointments, where if someone did have a zoning concern, they could make an appointment to transmit the documents or materials, and perhaps do it electronically anyway and obviate the need to be here, but not allow random public traffic in here during the health emergency. Mr. Warwick, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, we can certainly restrict the lobby or keep the door closed and have signage that tells folks what to do. And then that would eliminate the possibility of somebody using a restroom or something like that. I certainly think we can operate that way. And under that condition, would be my feeling that it'd be perfectly okay for the staff to report here, if that's what we want to do, because in our office space, we're all more than 6 feet apart. And then, like I say, if need be, we do have the ability to do it remotely. But I think we can operate and restrict the lobby.
Let me ask, sorry if I may, at the risk of asking you with the boss in the room, Beth, do you have any concerns about working here in the building currently? And please be honest if you do.
Not currently. I do think limiting access to the restrooms would probably make me more comfortable to the public. And
okay, Tracy, you're next door typically, but any concerns?
I don't really have any concerns. I do think the building should be closed. I mean, as being around here a lot of times, you'll see a lot of people walk in, they go straight to the restroom. That may be the only thing they're doing. They really don't have business here. We have people that walk down the street, they'll come in, they'll go to the restroom, they leave. So I do think we should limit. I like the idea of doing it by appointment. I think we should limit the public from just walking in the building now.
I think that makes sense. Kevin, do you have any thoughts about that? You're not on a microphone, so talk really loudly, please.
It doesn't. I'm out and about all day long, but I don't have a lot of contact with when I'm going out doing my inspections. I really don't have a lot of contact with people. So a lot of times I'm in my own little world. So really, I don't have any concerns really too much for myself when I'm out there. But inside the building, I kind of agree with Beth. With the restrooms and things of that sort.
I think that certainly makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense with the restrooms. You're right about that. Yeah. So by appointment, I know the concern before was there was a little concern because zoning operates through a glass window where they hand things back and forth. But yeah, that makes sense then.
Kevin, when you're going out, are you still going out, still interacting with people when you're making zoning inspections, or are you keeping distance?
Yesterday I did have a little bit of interaction with a resident, but I did keep my distance from them, kind of step back from them. But other than that, I really don't have a lot of contact with residents at all when I go out and do. A lot of times it's through the phone. Just phone contact back and forth with residents a lot of times.
Okay. I would move then that we as the Board of Trustees give the administrator discretion to make decisions as to the continued operation within the building of services as opposed to people working from home, but that we do restrict access to this building by the public except on an appointment-only basis for the next 30 days, and then we revisit that at our next meeting as to how that's working.
Okay, and I'll second that.
Mr. Weidman, did you have any other thoughts as to that beyond what you said earlier?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
I don't think I have anything further.
Okay, a motion to
Mr. Weidman.
Ray,
Yeah.
I had asked you to review our our employees and try to determine, a number of them have extenuating circumstances with childcare now that the schools have been closed. And I wanted to identify how many people we had in that situation where we might help mitigate some of the child care challenges they have, either by flex hours or if they have the ability to work at home. Obviously, Tracy's crew can't work from home, but perhaps we could provide them with flex hours in an effort to mitigate some of those child care challenges.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and review all our employees and see who might have that need, certainly.
That makes sense to me, too. Do we need a vote on that, or do you have discretion as to that already?
He would have discretion.
We can
Let's leave
flex
the
people's
discretion.
time.
Okay.
I mean, there's not.
Okay.
Anything else?
Well, a few thoughts. You mentioned our public buildings outside of this one, Schuler Center, the parks and so forth, are shut down through April 1st. Our next scheduled meeting isn't until right around then anyway, which butts up very close to making decisions as to that. You've got discretion there anyway, don't you? So you don't need us to act if you need to
Yes.
extend that?
Yes, and we will inform you, but we're just going to kind of watch and see over the next couple of weeks what's happening. And then we can make the decision to push that out farther. We really don't have that much on the schedule, and some of the even baseball teams are kind of abandoning their whole season.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's a big deal for us to go ahead and work that out in the calendar. The only exception would be April 4th. Is that the first shred day?
18th.
18th. What's the April?
April 4th is chipping, and then the following weekend is a trash bash.
Yeah.
So I've asked my crew about how they feel about that, because we've got a very busy month coming up. We've got 2 trash bash events. We've got chipping. We've got document destruction, and then we have chipping again. So we have 6 weekends in a row where we're going to have direct contact with the public. Now we do check IDs. We can tell them to stay in their cars, or we can just postpone. I mean, there is, especially trash bash, that's a lot of interaction with the public right there.
What do you want to do? What if you have we say we leave it up to you right now. What's your decision on that?
Some of them I think we go on. I'm a little worried about trash bash, to tell you the truth. I think we have too much direct contact with public. You have no idea who's in there. I mean, we know they're citizens, but we don't know, unless we're going to have somebody there questioning them, taking their temperature, and like Chief said, that doesn't necessarily mean it's safe. We would hate to do away with it, but I think if we postponed it, maybe till June or later, or at least give a possible date and look at how it's going in June.
No, I know
this is going to be around for months, I believe.
Yeah, and I know the newsletter is going out. We couldn't change it. There was a time limit on that, so that says that this is what we're doing this date. But let's use common sense. Let's postpone that. Let's put that off. Tracy,
at first I didn't feel bad about it, but with the way
Yeah.
this thing's changing every day, I don't think we should put our employees to any greater risk than we have to.
And should we move all? We have the 2 trash things. We have a shred day.
We have a mulch giveaway.
A mulch giveaway. Should we probably postpone all those until further notice?
I think it's probably a good idea
Okay.
until we see what's going on.
Yeah, why don't we do that? And also, 2 weeks from now is April. We're a couple of weeks away from April. Why don't we at least make that 30 days, Ray, where we shut down shelters, ball fields. Put
Okay.
30 days on that from right now. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the parks themselves aren't necessarily closed off at this point, of course.
No,
We're talking
no.
buildings. Let me ask, I know you're involved in an Easter egg hunt that's planned for early in
It's
April.
been canceled.
It's canceled? Okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I don't know that I guess we do have the authority if we needed to restrict people being out and about in the parks at some point. I don't think that's wise. On the other hand, being outdoors, people can easily maintain separation. I think it's good to encourage people to be there as long as they stay 6 feet apart or whatever's necessary.
So what we've talked about is not closing the parks. If somebody wants to come to the park, they want to walk the path, or they want a couple of guys to come out and have a practice or a ball game, that's fine. But anything that we've got scheduled is canceled. Practices, games, no organized functions that would have a permit are being allowed.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea because even if this virus starts winding down, the last thing we want to do is recycle it, and it kicks back up because everybody's starting to commute again, and all it takes is somebody to pass it on to somebody else, and then you're back to square one again. And until it starts getting humid enough and hot enough out to kill it on its own, with the weather, you're talking a couple months at least, probably.
Another question as to that: if we have the shelters there at the park, which are open air essentially, we're not taking reservations for that. Are we actually shutting them down? Because that's kind of hard to do anyway. And if not, are we doing any additional cleaning or sanitization there? I doubt anyone's using it yet, but as we're getting into spring, people may actually go there and use the picnic tables and touch them. And I don't know what sort of cleaning we do. With it being outdoors, I would hope anything on there is killed by sunlight and exposure, but things could linger for a while. Just something to think about anyway.
Yes.
With our parks.
We have not done anything yet. Obviously, they're not using them yet, but that's a good point. That
And bathrooms there too.
Yeah, bathrooms are locked down. We're not opening them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Tracy, you really should get an encapsulated suit, a Tyvek. I'll get you some information on it, but we
Okay.
really should get your guys a Tyvek suit and the gloves when they go in and do those bathrooms until this goes, because you're going into a small space. They touched multiple things inside the bathroom, basically, and you guys are in there trying to clean it. They really need to be protected.
Yes. So we weren't opening the bathrooms. We're going to leave them locked as long as we're keeping the events canceled also.
Are they clearly
That's my
labeled on the door as closed? If not, we
They
probably
are not yet because they haven't even been open for the season.
Okay.
Yet. It's still, winterized.
cleaning the doorknobs would be a good thing to add to the
Would be a
regimen,
good
though,
thing.
even if they're locked. So, water fountains, things like that too, if there are those there that are
There are.
active. Okay. I had that question, and Tom, did you have any comments about any of that, by the way?
Not about that.
Okay. Let me see. Just.
I did want to mention something about our April meetings in light of the public health emergency. We don't really know how much more difficult this is going to become, and I know it was suggested by the chief that we perhaps try to create our an electronic meeting for the month of April. And I just wanted to say, if we do that, then we probably need to pass some kind of resolution, first of all, that enables, allows Ray the latitude to pay bills, which we currently, I think, have at $2,500 as a threshold. So we would have to do something like that if we were to do that. And I think Ray might be able to address this as it relates to I think he was checking in on how we might be able to do that electronically. And for all we know, with the emergency we're currently in, it may only get worse, and there may be changes to the law that will allow us to have electronic meetings and vote. But in the meantime, we won't be able to do that if we have an electronic meeting, and we'll probably have to extend additional latitude through at least a voice vote, I'm guessing, to allow Ray to do some of the things that he currently can't do without a vote by the trustees.
Yeah, I think a resolution that would allow us to proceed with paying the bills outside of a capital expenditure, let's say, can be done. And what I would do is confer with Mr. Porter before we do it, so he signs off as he normally does. But I think that's a good idea for us to construct something like that.
Is there anything else, Ray, that you think in the short term? Like I said, I mean, we know what the parameters are today, but they could change tomorrow, just like they changed from 2 days ago. And so I think we have to anticipate that there may be additional changes and or restrictions as to how or when we meet, and it might be a better idea for us to kind of anticipate that now Is there anything else that you think that we might need to pass as it relates to a resolution or a voice vote that will allow us to enable you to do the things necessary to continue to keep the township running without necessarily a vote by the trustees?
Boy, I can't think of anything other than paying the bills, Tracy. We have latitude to, manage the staff. I'm not.
And most of our bills, our operating bill, we have POs for now for operations.
Right.
So other than capital.
Right, but I think it'd be
don't think
nice,
there's
even
anything-
with a motion today, to give us the latitude. That way we don't have to struggle with all the things that Tom's mentioning. And he's right. I don't know. Did you listen into the AG's phone call last night?
I tried and it was full. I couldn't access it.
Okay.
I will say the directive that the Attorney General issued last week suggested that in times of emergency, electronic meetings do appear to be permitted based on the health director's orders, but frankly his opinion, it looked quickly written and long, and it kind of went both ways too. So I don't know if he'll be issuing clarification on that. There is a proposed bill in the state legislature filed yesterday which would enable public meetings during times of emergency, but I don't know if they can meet to approve it if they're inclined to do it right now, because they'd be a crowd of more than 50 people. I don't know if there was an exception for them to meet in some way. So I think it is prudent to plan ahead for this. It seems we can probably meet electronically, and worst case, frankly, there's some protocols we could do if we need to strictly comply with Ohio law, which for the public's reference also does require that any deliberation or actual vote by trustees has to occur at an in-person meeting currently, although the Attorney General again seems to say that's suspended. But if we have to do it, heck, we can all get together in the parking lot and stand at a distance and shout from our car windows to vote if we need to at some point, if there's some emergency.
As long as we tell the public.
As long as we tell the public, right. And we can have the camera running, I suppose. We can have a car rally or something there and do that. But I think Mr. Weidman is correct. We need to give you some authority, at least in the short to medium term, to do some of that. And I would suggest perhaps a protocol, though, in addition to sharing it with Mr. Porter and conferring with him, perhaps if the trustees are given in advance a list of checks, as we've done now before the meeting, I would move that we authorize Mr. Warwick, in consultation with the fiscal officer, to pay bills during the next 3 months using the following procedure. Mr. Warwick or his staff will circulate a list of the checks to be paid to the trustees by email and request that the trustees notify him if there is any check they feel should not be paid, and if any trustee notifies the administrator that there is a check that should not be paid, that check should be pulled from the run, but all others to which there is no objection by a trustee should be paid without need for further vote.
Second.
Tom, does that address your concern?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I think that gives them the necessary latitude. We don't really know what we're gonna see in the next week or 3 weeks. So I think it's best to address this today. So I like that. I think it's best.
Okay, and I think that's consistent with Ohio law, and our law director can chime in later and let us know if it's not. But I think during the time of this emergency, that's a prudent way to approach it.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye. Mr. Work, anything else?
I can't think of anything else.
I guess the other thing that I'd like to address is the April meetings, and for us to maybe figure out how to set up electronic meetings in the event that we have new parameters put in place by the health department as to what we can and cannot do. So, Ray, I don't know if I think you were exploring this option. Do we have the ability to have our meetings done electronically in the same fashion that we're doing today, where we live stream it, or through something like I think that meeting or one of those other vehicles that we can use online, so that so the public can also see what's going on at the same time? Yes,
There's a few options that we've talked about, and we can be prepared to do that.
Okay. Tom, anything else? Tom, James?
Just one other thing to raise as a consideration going forward in the coming months, not an immediate concern, but a substantial chunk of the township's revenues come from the 4 JEDS districts, where we receive income taxes that are paid through the municipalities we've partnered with. And I think that money is probably going to drop down a bit in the next few quarters based on what we're seeing with people hunkering down, restaurants closing, and so forth. So we do need to be taking that into consideration. Mr. Porter might want to take a look at the budget and just see if there's anything in there that we need to consider in our next meetings as to whether there's anything we need to defer or take care of or anticipate because of that, because we could be looking at a revenue hit there and we need to be looking ahead for that.
Yeah, we'll do a reconciliation and accounting of the JEDs. As it sits right now, all 4 of them have reserves. But yeah, we'll take a look at what typically, what we have budgeted to come out of those JEDs to support the expense budgets of the various departments, and see what effect that has if we took the inflows down by 15% or 20%. My guess is we'll be okay, but we'll do that exercise.
Great. That's all I had for this meeting.
Mr. Weedman, anything else?
No, that's it.
Well, actually, wait. Let me follow up on what Mr. Weedman was saying, though, about remote meetings. Should we make some decision now, perhaps, just giving Mr. Warwick discretion to make the arrangements and decisions necessary for our next meetings as currently scheduled, and if need be, to combine the workshop and evening meeting set for the beginning of April into one meeting, if that makes sense?
I think that makes sense also.
Yeah, then I would so move.
I'll second that.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. LaBarber?
Aye.
Since we were talking about revenue, I have been tracking all of the expense that we've had to use on this coronavirus in case there's any federal refund, any federal assistance that's going to come to us that we can try to recoup some of our
Which
money
we
back.
think there's going to be. And Tracy, we need to do the same thing.
Good. And let me mention for the public as well, you mentioned to us before the meeting you'd put an app together for tracking symptoms for people. Are you going to be using that in the field as well?
Just for gatherings like this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, for the public.
If you're referring to like a patient thing,
Yeah.
we do that anyway.
Okay.
With our run report.
For the public's reference, Chief Penny is very tech savvy, as is his staff, and he's very good at putting back-end systems together to help manage the department. So you're always impressive in what you do there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anybody has a comment? Nothing? Okay,
Tom,
motion-
anything else?
No, that's all.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. All right, Tom, anything else before I hang up?
Yep, that's good. Thank you.
All right, take care of yourself down there. Thanks.